do is spend the next 23 minutes or so before your mystery guest talking about the path to victory for the Minnesota Vikings. I want to continue where Judd and I left off on a podcast-only version of the show, which you can hear on the podcast feed for Purple Daily, but I want to get your opinion. We laid out some things that the Minnesota Vikings can do in New Orleans to win. And, of course, at the very top of that list, Alex, it has to start with the quarterback and Kirk Cousins. I want to know what you made of Cameron Jordan saying it depends on which Kirk shows up. Because I've been saying that for 2 years now since watching him. And even though you don't want the old bulletin board material, I mean, Cameron Jordan just gave an honest answer. And I think it's what everyone is thinking going into this game is that it depends on which version of Cousins shows up.
Absolutely. It does. I mean, you look at the Green Bay game is so recent. And I think that's what everyone's so worried about is like, man, especially as a player, like, nothing beat going into a bye week on a loss because it would just sit there and harp on your mind like, man, I could have done this better. I should have done this better. Now I have a whole week to sit here and think about what I should have done better. And for me, this team kind of went through that. Like, hey, man, you guys lost a big one. Now you have a week to sit and think about it. Like sometimes that doesn't mentally go well. And that is one of my biggest fears. But everybody's out here like, well, you know, the Saints got this one, whatever. Dude, I really don't know if I see it that way. And I people could say whatever they want, but I broke down 4 of my own games, and I don't need someone to tell me what I'm looking at because I got to, dude, look at these notes. I mean, I got some serious notes.
That's a lot of notage right there.
That's
is
just
that
one
on
game.
The Saints?
Yes.
Or okay.
This is like how you beat the
Your
Saints.
game planning.
Dude, one of the biggest things that shows up for the Saints, and this would be the path to, what was it? Path to
victory. In fact,
the journey to victory.
Jonathan, every time I say path to victory, if you could hit some NFL Films music, just every time.
Like
going forward after this, when you're ready,
whenever you're on.
All right,
path to success.
Trying to clean up over here.
Just we'll wait. I want this. I want this to work.
I do too.
Which one do you want?
It doesn't matter. So
that's
all right. There you go. There you go. And you don't have to keep it going, but just when I say path to victory, just hit something.
Chimes.
Yeah. I just anything you got. Okay.
In and out, love it.
So you watched 4 Saints games. Yeah. And what did you then take away in that massive notebook?
Dude, I got a lot.
That the Vikings can take advantage of? Like, what's number one?
Number one,
assuming that Cousins doesn't check down to CJ Ham 3 times in the first drive. Like,
dude,
let's just say because if that happens, it's just over.
Right, it is.
There's nothing you can do at that point. Everyone can play great and you'll lose.
Right, I agree with you. And I think that you're looking at this, you're saying number one, it's going to fall on the O-line to give Kirk, number one, the pocket that he needs because you're in a crazy stadium and people don't know. When you're in a dome and there's the crowd's kind of on top of you, you constantly feel like you're pressured and you constantly feel like everything's closing in. So you'll see everyone's always kind of like trying to be away. Oh, man, give me my space, dude. I need my space for a minute. They got to give him what he needs. But if you do, dude, this defense is feast or famine. I mean, they're either going to come down with Cameron Jordan down the middle of the pipe or you're going to throw a 65-yard touchdown and that's how it's going to go. So when you're looking at this, if you can give your quarterback just – I don't know, 2 seconds, a time to get a slant route going. Play action against them is one of the biggest things they have problems with. And another thing that I was like, man, the tosses on the outside, they're teams that get them all the time. They get in this bunch formation, 3 receivers, and it's like they want to bring the entire defense on the inside of those guys. What are you doing? You've out-leveraged yourself. Everyone's just tossing the ball. And what is that? What we talked about that before. What does that do? Get your cornerback start tackling. And, that secondary does not want to tackle. I'm sorry.
Well, doesn't want to tackle Dalvin Cook, especially. And the Vikings love to use Dalvin Cook on the outsides on those pitches all the time.
I mean, this is what's their bread and butter. And you give Dalvin the chance to get the ball in his hands right now, ahead of steam going, and you can pick which way you want to go. I mean, that's going to set up the play action, which for this defense gets their secondary in so many bad positions. You look at all the shots that have been taken on this team. There's a ton of them. I mean, these guys are just getting – Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen are going to have a field day if they can get the run game going. It's going to be a total feast for the Vikings.
Sorry, I'm tweeting out the link to the video with the path to victory. Path to victory. Very good. So let's organize our path to victory then.
Yes.
So I agree with you that it all starts with Dalvin Cook in this game.
Yeah.
And it really is always all started with Dalvin Cook for the entire season. I mean, when you look at when Dalvin Cook is at his best in October, when he's healthy, when he's explosive, he is scaring the pants off of other teams. they're rushing at him with their linebackers, being super aggressive, but also game planning first to stop him and then saying, well, we're going to make Kirk beat us. And the problem with that for opposing defenses is he will. Right. He will throw it accurately down the field if the opposing team game plans specifically to stop Dalvin Cook. However, I was watching something about some of the play actions and boots that they run, where they run like deep post concepts, and how the Saints have had some success in defending those the same way that the Green Bay Packers did. But at the same time, when they played against the 49ers, who run a Shanahan offense, the 49ers went absolutely berserk. Was that one of the games that you watched?
Yes.
So what happened there that the 49ers did with the Shanahan-style offense, which is what the Vikings run, that
action
worked?
I mean, it's all the play action. Everything's complementing this run game. And then all of a sudden you have DeMarco Davis stepping up, and then you have guys come out. You know what else was a big one? The hide routes. You start watching these games and
you love the hide routes.
Dude, because it shows up. So it's like the easiest thing in the world. We're all going to run to the right and throw a 20-yard pass real quick. Okay. It's just, after a while, it's like teams are starting to lull them to sleep, right? They constantly run this zone where the tight end comes back and smashes the defensive end. And all of a sudden, the defensive end says, listen, dude, I don't want this anymore. I'm going to get out of your way. Well, right when he does that, well, here comes that waggle, and you just let the one guy free. Like, if you watch their games, teams just beat on them. The teams that win have just beat on them. And we're going to run our offense. We're going to run the ball as much as we can. Yeah, there's a few gimmicks here and there. Every game has their gimmicks. You got to keep people honest. And that leads me into like their offense. Their offense is a smoke and mirrors, dude. I mean, there's always somebody moving somewhere. And what does that do? It's just eye candy. I'm just a big distraction to show you something that you shouldn't see, right? Like Jared Cook goes in a Y motion to settle. Like everyone's looking at him like, why is he going over there? Next thing you know, it's counter the other way. It's something to make you look one way so you get smacked the other. And that's what their offense is. But for this offense, for the Vikings, if you can get those hide routes to start showing up with the waggles, those are the simple plays that get you the first downs, that get you going. Those are the drive starters. Those are the simple plays that, hey, listen, guys, we're in a tough situation. We're going to run a waggle. We're going to get 15 yards. We're going to break into a nice cycle. And then all of a sudden, we're going to start tossing the ball. We're going to start running some zone, the cutbacks. The linebackers just love to flow. Dude, let them run. Dalvin, do what you want, baby. It's going to be so fun.
I think it's incredibly important to start off with some of the simple stuff for Kirk Cousins, just getting him settled into the game.
Yeah.
And in a way, this is weird, but I sort of like this take that somebody brought up. If you win the coin toss, usually teams defer, but getting Kirk out there on the field to start out the game with his game script in the situation that he can predict, starting at the 25, you've got the ball, you're ready to go, is generally good for him. It's sort of the expectation that he sets. It's not a unique where something different gets thrown at you and all of a sudden you have to go off the game script, because executing the script has been really, really good for him this year. It speaks to how well Kevin Stefanski has done. And when they're on the game script, which is usually first 25 plays or 15 plays. 15. So your first 15 plays that PFF did a look at this, and the Vikings are one of the best teams in the NFL in their first 15 plays. You could think the Chargers, at Seattle, at Dallas, all these games where Kirk played pretty well. Right off the bat, he's moving down the field, he's scoring a touchdown. And that to me is extremely important for him to start off that way, because in the past, when he hasn't started off that way, when he does try to check down and overthrow CJ Ham, it seems to get in his head pretty quickly.
Yeah, and you as a fan, you can see it too. Like, remember what game was it? He overthrew CJ by like a couple yards. And everyone was like,
Green Bay.
Green Bay, yeah.
But he also,
that's it.
I mean, he also threw short to Adam Thielen in Kansas City on a play that he hits 99 out of 100 times.
That's when you get scared.
Same thing where you're like, oh no, it's that version, and he's here today, and that's going to be a problem. And I don't know, other than getting him some screen passes, quick throws, and big runs from Dalvin, if there is another way to shake that from Cousins. I mean, it might be a thing that is fundamental to him that early on in a lot of games, he just has problems. But I think in some games where there could have been pressure, Kevin Stefanski's done a good job of figuring out how to either get him out of that, like in Denver or in Kansas City, where they did take the lead in the fourth quarter and didn't come through at the end, or on screen passes, quick throws like they did against Philly and like they did against the Seattle Seahawks.
Right. But don't you think as an offensive coordinator, you should go and go, what are the best 15 plays to calm this guy down? Like by now you should know. So if you go into this game and everything starts all willy-nilly again, everyone's going to look back at Stefanski like, dude, you just did this 2 weeks ago. And now we're all like, hey, man, you got a real shot to do this. But you're right. It's how you start the first 5 plays. If he's cool and calm and, hey, man, we're going to hand it off. We're going to toss one. We're going to throw one. We're going to boot it a little bit. If he gets off on a good foot, dude, it's going to be a hell of a game.
So tell me how much it matters to when you have a game like Green Bay, and that's the last time you were on the field. Because I look at Green Bay winning that game, and you could have said, oh, Green Bay, they've got all this momentum. Look at them. They just beat the Vikings on ESPN. And then they almost lose to David Blau the very next week. And when coaches and players say it's a week-to-week league, my eyes roll back in my head. So do yours. So do all fans. It's cliche. We've heard it a million times. But it's also been said this many times because I think it's true. I don't think what happened against Green Bay matters a whole lot to what is going to happen in New Orleans, even though it completely changed the way that fans felt about this team.
I disagree. And because I say that when you start the game with an offense on the 10-yard line and you can't put a touchdown in, like, dude, your defense just came up with something awesome for you and you can't finish it for them. That's like a glaring problem to me. And as an offensive lineman, I'd have been like, dude, what the hell did we just do? Where are we going from here? That was not right,
But you're over that by now, aren't you?
Nah, I mean, I think that, you're looking at it, you're like, dude, are we over it? Are we going to fix this? Is this a problem? And I get it. You don't have Dalvin, but still, I mean, it just wasn't the way I thought you would start that game. On the 10, you got all the momentum. You got the stadium behind you. 70,000 people. We're going to load up and we're going to pack our wagons right down the A-gap. And that's how we're going to start. Or we're going to toss the ball outside. We're going to do something. We're going to just keep drenching these guys in their own freaking muck. And that's what the problem is that, like, you start to get too creative. And that's what's scary. And that's where a lot of teams get hurt against the Saints, is because they can't do what they want to do because they're playing Drew Brees. And so they're like, man, now we're playing catch-up ball. Because I was doing some stats last night. I never really do stats, but we used to do stats when we played.
Wait, what's that? What were you doing?
Different stats. We're not trying to grade. We're not trying to grade people. We're just looking at, like, hey, listen, this is what they do on these downs. So you're looking at a few things and you're like, all right, yeah, they have the 4th best rushing defense. And you're like, well, really? I don't really know anybody over that's a big run stopper.
It's because of Drew, because he's ahead in the game.
They have the 3rd least amount of attempts because you're playing Drew all the time. So you wonder, hey, listen, if you did go in there with an offense like maybe Kyle Shanahan's with a bunch of running backs that like to be physical, or a Dalvin Cook who says, hey, listen, I get what they wanted to do, but that was silly for them to try that. Here's what we're going to do. Now we want to see if you want to play our game. And that's why I feel really healthy. Like, man, this could be in the Vikings' favor.
Well, right. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, when you try to go back through that Green Bay game and what you can take away from it and what you can, correct, because there's the fundamental flaws of this team are obvious. Number 1 is Kirk has games where he doesn't show up. Number 2 is usually in those games where he doesn't show up, there's something similar that happens. It's a giant human being who's very violent, who's crashing through your offensive line and getting in his face and terrifying him. And that's what happened with Zadarius Smith. Yep. And there is the potential for that with Cameron Jordan in this game. But there isn't really another guy, because Davenport is out and Rankins is out. Right. There really isn't another guy where you go, okay, he's unbeatable. And against Von Miller, Von got a sack, but he only got 2 pressures in that game. It wasn't like he dominated in the second half when they came back. And that's where I think the Vikings do have an opportunity here to perform better against New Orleans in New Orleans than they did against a team like Green Bay, because Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith and Kenny Clark were in the backfield on every other play. And you don't have a quarterback who can reduce pressure because of the way he moves. So if you have Russell Wilson, he could just escape and make a play somewhere. But Cousins is not going to be that guy. And in terms of path to victory, they have one guy in my mind. One guy.
Maybe two.
To really shut down. Who's the other guy?
DeMarco Davis. If you notice, he shows up a lot in these passing situations. He's one of these linebackers.
He rushes a lot.
He rushes a lot. So if you're going in this game, you're like, listen, we're going to go 3 down with the bigs. Any 90 numbers, an automatic down. And DeMarco Davis, if he walks
DeMario.
up. DeMario. Sorry, what did I say?
You said DeMarco.
DeMarco.
Okay. There's lots of DeMarcos around.
If he walks up, there's a good chance we're going to count him as a down guy. You know what he likes to do? They like to twist him a lot too. And that's something that the Vikings are going to have to clean up, because that's some of the things that showed up in the Packers week.
Now, can you do that when the other team is rushing on you successfully? Can you do the twists and the stunts and all those things up front the same way?
Yeah. I mean, well, it doesn't matter how. You don't have to do it exactly like they did. You just have to go, listen, they're vulnerable in the twist game. Why? Because they're on different levels. They're not setting correctly. They're not setting back as a unit. They're not. It looks like everybody's on their own little spacing, and it causes these like little blips. And you see it sometimes in pass protection, these little gaps between the guys. Instantly, I'm like, hey, listen, we're going to ET this guy because he wants to open up this big door for me to run through, and it's called his left hip. And when you don't fix that, teams like this down in New Orleans, who are going to be playing with the electricity behind them and who love to just be in these exotic defenses where you see 8 guys walked up, and at times they just bring all 8. Like, they're like, dude, they don't care about running all out, which should be something that goes up on your radar. Like, dude, every situation is live now. We need to know.
And as far as the Vikings go, they have hit on big plays sometimes when the opponent brings everybody up. But it's also a weakness of Kirk Cousins that when the defense doesn't show you right away what they're going to be. And I asked Sean Payton about this, about playing against Cousins, and he said the key is that you have to make sure whatever you're putting in on defense does not reveal itself at the line of scrimmage, because Cousins will read it and he'll pick it apart. Right. And we've seen that from some defenses like Detroit. The first time they played Detroit, it was about as simple as it got, or at least from me watching the film back, it looked like Kirk knew where he was going to go before the snap on every play. Same with Philadelphia. Like, we're going to get this look. They've got one safety up there, and they're playing man. And, of course, our receiver can beat man, so let's go. But if they're bringing everybody up and they're standing guys up around the line of scrimmage, last year in New England, the Patriots did that a lot, I think, with the idea that Kirk, if you can slow him down by that half tick by confusing him just ever so much that he can't make plays, that could be a problem for the Vikings.
I agree.
That's not path to victory. That's a problem.
That is path to victory.
But you can still play it if you want. There you go.
Oh, we're catching John off guard today. Is it because I'm here today, John?
No, it's because he's been out. He's just not as sharp. He's like Thielen in his first game back. Like, he just didn't have the same burst.
I'm getting back.
You're good.
It's my first day back after 2 weeks.
You know what? You could take accountability in the post-game press conference.
No, you know
for sure I will.
You know what's another big thing too is when you bring those guys up there and they show that blitz and you're almost like 100% sure that they're all coming, you instantly go to your first read like, listen, I'm going to catch and throw. When they drop, it is like, I mean, even as an offensive lineman, because you're standing in your stance and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go here, but if he drops, man, I got to get out there. Like, there's no time. And sometimes they catch you off guard because they step. You know, that's the new thing. That drives me nuts. These guys, they like step across the line like, I'm coming. No, I'm not. And you're like, God, he just ate me up and I should have known that. And drives you nuts. But these guys do a good job of getting exotic. I think that wherever Davis is going to be, expect a twist, especially out on the tackles. He likes to pick those tackles a lot. But, you know, they're feast or famine. They're going to bring everybody and they're going to hope that their defensive backs are playing well and everything's going well. But, man, there's a lot of times that you see receivers just run right by guys, and it's incredible.
See, this is the reason I think that you would actually like Pro Football Focus and analytics to stay with me here, because it has the exact number of pass rush snaps that Demario Davis had this year. It was the 4th most among middle linebackers in the entire NFL.
Fair.
So the point that you're making, the thing that you're seeing, you can confirm via the numbers that he was one of the top guys in terms of rushing. And I can't think of too many examples of the Vikings facing guys that were like this year. Just looking at the numbers, there aren't too many other. I mean, he's way above Anthony Barr, and Anthony Barr does rush a fair amount for a linebacker.
Middle linebackers don't do that as much anymore.
No, not really.
They've kind of gone to like, hey, man, we pay defensive ends to do that. Let's just
let those do that. You're kind of like a glorified safety in a lot of ways.
Right.
Mostly coverage and run stopping.
Exactly. And like a Kendricks. Kendricks is like the
doesn't
next.
Rush that often.
Yep. Like, I feel like it went from Luke Kuechly, and now all of a sudden it's shifting towards this Kendricks. And it's like a guy that can cover anybody and stop the run sideline to sideline and doesn't need help, doesn't need assistance. I mean, a healthy Kendricks is a scary Kendricks.
Right. Let's also talk about that as far as the path to victory. I love that. Kendricks was at practice today, and he did not practice yesterday. So that, in terms of your news, is very good for the Vikings. But he didn't exactly look like a guy who was 100% when he was out there warming up.
Scares me.
And he was limited today. Mackenzie Alexander out with a knee injury for 2 straight days. That does not bode well to his chances. Yeah. And I understand that, especially when you played with Alexander, he was nowhere close to being what he is now. I think he's grown a ton.
Oh, absolutely.
But also, here's the domino effect to this. If you don't have Kendricks and you don't have Alexander, that's the middle of your field. I mean, that's your nickel corner and that's your middle linebacker. And this is a team that loves to attack the middle of the field with Kamara coming out, with Michael Thomas over the middle. Now you are in their place. It's the guy who calls out all the signals in Kendricks. And then Mike Hughes will have to play nickel corner. He's mostly been playing outside, rotating with Rhodes. So now he's got to go to an unfamiliar spot. And now you can't rotate him with Rhodes anymore.
I know. And then you got Michael Thomas, one of the most physical wide receivers out there, who was it 35 receptions over? What is that, 3 games? This dude played 3 extra games. No big deal.
Incredible. I mean, a crazy amount of receptions.
That's why, I can – Mackenzie Alexander is absolutely taking steps since I played with him. But the biggest problem for me is Kendricks. If he's not 100%.
No question.
Because I feel like this team doesn't need a run game to get going. They're not like the team that's like, man, we're really depending on this running the ball. They're just like, dude, we'll slice you up any which way we want to. We just haven't decided yet. And for them this week, it could be, hey, listen, let's attack Kendricks. Let's get Kamara running those Texas routes, some flat routes. He loves to just get out of the backfield, stutter step, and he's either going in, out. There's times he does the seam route. I mean, and another thing too is that swing route. They love that stupid swing route. I hate it. Drives me nuts. He's like, Breeze will go like 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm perfect swing route. Like, I'm like, God, it just drives me nuts.
Yeah, he is very hard to stop when he's playing well. And in his last 4 games, he has 137 quarterback rating. By the way, here's another stat that you'll love. Michael Thomas this year, 52 of his 1 zillion receptions, I think it was 148, 52 of them and 64 targets came out of the slot. And so if your slot corner is out, then are you asking Rhodes to shadow? And at this time in Rhodes' career, asking him to shadow is really tough.
I think that this is the kind of guy you want him to shadow.
Yes, I agree.
And this is one of the things that it goes into it's like, listen, X likes to be physical. Michael Thomas likes to be physical. Now, listen, I was reading this article. Popped up on my phone about how like everyone's gonna be happy about the refs. If the refs become a problem this year, I'm gonna lose it. Like if everyone complains about these stupid refs again, like they better not hose the Saints. They better not hose the game.
That ruined the first week of the Super Bowl last year.
Right. I don't care if it's the Patriots. I don't care if it's Paul Brown's team. Stop hosing games. If Michael Thomas wants to be physical, let Xavier be physical back. We'll see who wants to play.
It's a huge factor.
But then here's the thing is like, you can't call DPI or OPI. Like at some point you have to be like, listen, we're just going to let you two go at it. And however it falls, it falls.
It is weird that, even with Rhodes being one of the worst corners in the league by quarterback rating against, of all the corners that have to go against Michael Thomas, you would still give him maybe the best shot because of his size and strength. There are not too many 6'1" guys with his type of strength.
He has the worst quarterback rating because he is so physical that he gets in so much trouble because of it. That's the only reason. Like I feel like people say that and they're like, wow, he must be bad. No, he's just bad because he likes to be physical, and that's not the league that they want anymore. But for some games, like if you're gonna play a receiver that doesn't mind a little push, doesn't mind a little grab here or there, let him play, man. This is for everything. Like you gotta just throw all the cards on the table. And if I'm telling you, dude, I'll lose it. The refs ruin this game.